Hey guys, it's Brady. I'm gonna read to you Genesis. There's Bria. Um, I'm gonna read to you Genesis 45 verses 16 through 28. So it's about when Pharaoh invites Jacob to Egypt. So it says, the news soon reached Pharaoh's place. Joseph's brothers have arrived. Pharaoh and his officials were all delighted to hear this. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers, this is what you must do. Load your pack animals and hurry back to the land of Canaan. Then get your father and all of your families and return here to me. I will give you the very best land in Egypt, and you will eat from the best that the land produces." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers, take wagons from the land of Egypt to carry your little children and your wives, and bring your father here. Don't worry about your personal belongings, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours." So the sons of Jacob did as they were told. Joseph provided them with wagons, as Pharaoh had commanded, and he gave them supplies for the journey. And he gave them each new clothes, but to Benjamin he gave 5 changes of clothes and 300 pieces of silver. He also sent his father 10 male donkeys loaded with the finest products of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and other supplies he would need on his journey. So Joseph sent his brothers off, and they left. He called after them, "Don't quarrel about all this along the way." And they left Egypt and returned to their father, Jacob, in the land of Canaan. "Joseph is alive," they told him, and he is governor of all the land of Egypt. Jacob was stunned at the news. He couldn't believe it. But they repeated to Jacob everything Joseph had told them. And when he saw the wagons Joseph had sent to carry him, their father's spirits revived. Then Jacob exclaimed, "It must be true. My son Joseph is alive. I must go and see him before I die." And that's it.
Well, good morning. Today's lesson that Brady read for us tells us some of the details that are happening to Joseph's life, and we see now finally that there's good coming out of what all this bad stuff that had happened. Joseph had been thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, left in jail, falsely accused, all these things, and then little by little, God moves in his life to put him in a position of power, and now we start to see why. He's able to save the entire country of Egypt and all the land surrounding them from starvation. He's able to save and provide for his family. And now in our story, we see how Pharaoh, the real king of Egypt, is happy to have Joseph's family join them in Egypt. And so now Joseph's family is being shown this special favor. They're being welcomed into Egypt. And then, as we know, they lived there for a long time. And then eventually they become persecuted. And then Moses leads them out, and God leads them into the promised land. But up until this point, God's promise to the Israelites is just only just begun. It's a very simple thing. And so what I wanted us to actually look at is in chapter 45, or 46, beginning of 46. This is after Pharaoh has invited all of Joseph's family to come join them. And Joseph's father, his name is Jacob, but he was also renamed Israel. So sometimes it's confusing. It's Jacob and also Israel. So when we talk about the Israelites, we're talking about the kids of Jacob. And so right here in verse 1 it says, "So Jacob set out for Egypt with all his possessions. And when he came to Beersheba, he offered sacrifice to the God of his father Isaac. And then, during the night, God spoke to him in a vision. 'Jacob, Jacob,' he called. 'Here I am,' Jacob replied. 'I am God, the God of your father,' the voice said. 'Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make your family into a great nation.'" So, what's happening here? God is telling Jacob, also known as Israel, that the promise that God had made to Jacob's grandfather, to Abraham, is still going to happen. So Abraham had a son named Isaac, and Isaac had a son named Jacob, who was also renamed Israel, who had 12 sons, one of which was Joseph. So, way back before, Abraham was told, I will be your God, and you will be the father of a great nation, and they will be my people, and through your descendants, I will bless the whole world. And it's kind of like, oh wow, what a promise. And then he has his son Isaac, and then Isaac has Jacob, renamed Israel. And God is telling Israel, Jacob, he's saying, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I'll make your family into a great nation. He's saying, I know you almost just starved to death, but I provided. I made sure Joseph went there ahead of you and took care of it. And now, don't be afraid to go to Egypt, because I will continue to provide for you. And I will make you into a great nation. And then we know that way down the road, one of Jacob's descendants, one of the Israelites, is Jesus. And Jesus does come and bless the whole world. So what can we learn from this? Why is this in the Bible? That's always the question we need to ask. And I think it's important that we see that God uses bad situations to do good things. So he provided for Jacob's family and all the surrounding areas by taking something bad. All the bad things that happened to Joseph were worked out for the good of his family and for the good of many, many people. And then we also need to know that God keeps his promises. He made a promise. It's called a covenant. He made a covenant with Abraham, a promise that he would bless him, he would make him into a great nation, and from his descendants, the whole world would be blessed. And now we see that it's passed on through Isaac, it's passed on through Jacob, also named Israel, and it passed on through his 12 kids, formed the nation of Israel with their 12 tribes, and God is still going to complete his promise. He's saying, I have a plan. It's a big, long plan that involves you going to Egypt, becoming slaves, getting freed again, and then Moses, and then all this stuff that we know. That's all part of God's plan. And he says, don't be afraid. My plan is good, and I will keep my promises. So that's important for us to know. God has a plan even when it's hard to see, and he does keep his promises. God promises to never leave us or forsake us. He promises to care for us, to meet our needs. And he promises that, if we seek first, if we look to do what's right first, and we worry about honoring him first, he'll take care of things like what are we going to eat and what are we going to wear. And so we need to trust that God has a plan. His plans are good, and he always keeps his promises. And that's one of the great things we can learn from the story of Joseph.